this is the Group Force project. We are going to be talking about Marissa Mori from the Futurist movement in some of her works. Marissa Mori was one of the few female artists of the Futurism movement. She was mostly a painter and as well as a printmaker. And we're going to be talking about some of her paintings and how they connect to the movement. As a result of the rise of fascism in the movement in the 1930s, she ended up leaving. She separated herself from the movement.
Marissa Mori was born on March 9th, 1900, and she was a direct descendant of the Renaissance sculptor Gian Lorenzo Bernini, and her family status allowed her to trade for a number of years with another artist, which is Felice Casorti. And while his influence is seen through her work, specifically in the physical thrill of maternity painting, which we'll talk about later. And as mentioned before, Marie was one of the few female painters who aligned herself with the Futurist movement. And she aligned herself with the movement from the late 1920s until the 1938s. And during that time, she produced a number of works that were considered some of her best era painting.
All right, so for Marissa Mori's achievements, her major achievements range in her paintings and her attendance in the exhibitions and her prizes. So the first major one was in November 1931, when her design of ceramics were produced by the company Mazzotti in Albisola after an exhibition of Futurist paintings. And then she attended the first National Futurist exhibition in 1933. And in 1933, she won a prize at Mostra Futurista di Scenotecnica Cinematografica, which translates as Futurist Exhibition of Cinematographic Scenography. And again, in 1933, she won another prize for Il Premio del Golfo della Spezia, and her work was shown at the Mostra d'Arte Futurista, which is an exhibition of futurist art in Florence. And the Il Premio del Golfo della Spezia translates as the prize of the Gulf of La Spezia. It was an important competition with her triptych Gulf synthesis, representing three states of mind of the Gulf: romantic, military, and joyful. And the painting on the right that you see is actually a self-portrait of Marissa Mori. It was donated by her son, Franco Mori, to the Gallery of Florence.
In the physical thrill of maternity painting, Marie uses the female body as a, unquote, as a symbol of confined and violent selfhood. Mori clearly identified as a feminist and was very vocal about her distaste for motherhood. And her view was in contrast with majority of the men of the Futurist movement, specifically Marinetti, who expressed that, quote, the ultimate role for women is to carry children, and that it is what they should strive for, basically the creation of a family. And this painting is basically her showing that childbirth is violent, and childbirth is basically just basically showing her distaste for motherhood and how she identifies herself as a feminist. And in that painting, the intentional colors used are to be perceived as bruises, which is the purple colors, and the red colors as blood. Futurist art is usually aggressive, violent, and it is displayed in an abstract medium. While Mori did exhibit the violent nature of childbirth, she showed vulnerability in her work, which is seen through the limp, lifeless body of the woman, which can't be perceived as aggressive. and it is perceived as very emotional and very humanizing. And Mori uses her experience as a woman to introduce childbirth instead of war and death, which is typically showed in majority of the artists of the period.
As we have seen in class during our discussion of futurism, the main focus was to break away from the norm of depicting limited subjects in art, as well as using nude colors. I think Marissa is a perfect example of how painters deviated and separated themselves from generations of painters before them. She usually focuses on themes such as still life, portraits, or masks, and in some cases she actually combines these themes. Her painting Study of Two Masks, which we can see on this slide, is one example where she combined the theme of masks and still life by painting masks in the front, and as well as what it seems to be a fruit basket in the background. In the case of Marinetti, we saw how noise was also one of the main focuses which futurists wanted to depict in their art. And we can see with Marissa that there is kind of a departure from the usual machinery and speed theme of futurism. She uses 3D objects and bright colors to show different angles at once, kind of the same as what we saw in the Nude Descending a Staircase painting of Marcel Duchamp. And the use of masks in her paintings can be also thought of as figurative paintings, which I think she does a really good job in bringing that into the futurist aspects of her works. During the time period that she was living in, women in Italy were not allowed to fly planes. So in 1934, Marinetti chose a pilot for Marissa to experience something she had never before. And during this flight, she experienced new emotions in which she kind of transferred into her paintings. And one example could be the mechanical division of the crowd, which we can see on the slide here at the bottom. And in her painting, she uses different emotions she felt during this experience to show different facial expressions and different color contrasts. And I think this is a great example of futurism, not only in art, but also in allowing other females to see that they are not limited to what society tells them.
Mori's involvement with the movement came with the second wave of futurism, and in my opinion, this is a lot less rigid, which I think gave her the ability to do some of the things that she was able to do with her art. Like we discussed earlier with the physical thrill of maternity, with her pushing the boundaries of what the idea of futurism represented. Like previously said, she added the new perspective that was not within the movement at all. And she was also very heavily involved with people who had a lot of pull in the movement, like Marinetti. She, and this is kind of turned into a little bit of a rite of passage for a lot of futurists, but she was involved with the manifesto, and that was with Marinetti's Manifesto of Futurist Cuisine. She was involved with the drafting of that as well. And yes, once again, I really do think that what makes her interesting, and part of the reason we chose to feature her, is just because of her new and unique perspective as a female artist, because no one else in the movement really portrayed motherhood in the same way they would portray war and violence and aggression. So, like I just said, Mori definitely deviated from traditional futurism ideas, but she also deviated from the politics associated with futurism. It's kind of difficult to separate futurism from pasteurism because they're so interlocked. So I think it's worth noting that she had to leave the futurism movement because of her disagreements with a lot of different things, but mainly what really pushed her was the Manifesto of Race, which was enacted by Mussolini at a time where a lot of anti-Semitism was going on, and she had members of her family who were Jewish, and she couldn't really come back from what other fascists or futurists were saying. So she left the movement and she started to focus more on still lifes, nudes, and masks, and she really aligned with classical themes, but she still has the essence of futurism in all of her works, which I think is quite telling of where her heart truly lied throughout her entire career.